Welcome to our Research Like a Pro with DNA Q&A series. And we're going to talk today about how AI can help you in some of your writing. So this question has come up because we all know about the great tool that artificial intelligence is, and especially where it's really good with writing. So, how can we actually use it to write our reports as we're going? One of the common things that people like to do is to write as they go. So, to get that report started right when you get going on your research, and that is a technique that AI can help you with. And of course, the principles I'm going to share here can also apply to writing your report at any time, whether you wait till the end of your research or you do write all along. So here's some tips for writing as you research, as well as writing at the end of your research. So you're going to want to make sure you have done a really good job on your research log. This is what you should have open as you're doing your research, and you're going to want to fill that out as best you can. And then the next step will be to ask AI to summarize rows of the research log, maybe just one, maybe multiple. Then you'll chat with your chatbot, make some adjustments to its summary, and then you can add that to your project document where you're putting all of your research notes. So we're going to go through each one of these tips and I'll show you some fun examples. So first of all, filling out the research log. Try not to neglect this because it's not very fun to go back and fill something out. So sometimes in our anxiousness to follow our research plan and look at sources, we may be tempted just to go fast, but you'll see that it's really helpful to have it filled out well. Create your source citation and abstract your information. Take out all the basics, do some analysis. You can do this in a comments cell where you actually think about it, talk about it, write about, what did this show? What are your thoughts about this record that you have just found? And then if you found someone in the fan club, a friend, associate, or neighbors, you can add that. And, you know, think about how it might give you some evidence and information for your research objective. So, these two things could be combined in one cell. You could have them in different ones. You could talk about original derivative sources, whatever you want to do, but just think about how this could all go into your research report. So I'm going to do some examples based on my research objective for my project on Henderson, Weatherford. And I have a hypothesis that this William Weatherford of Izard County is Henderson's father. And for this project, I will be using DNA and documentary evidence. So I have the key identifiers. William was born about 1780, 1790. He's present on the 1830 census of Izard County. Henderson was born about 1815 in Tennessee and dies out in Dallas County. And he marries Clemsy about 1838 in Izard County, Arkansas. So that is my research objective. And here is the bit of my research log that I'm going to have AI help me to summarize. So this is all information about William Weatherford that I have so far gathered. And so you'll see that we have got some events here. His birth is being decided on because of his age in the 1830 census. Then we've got some tax records, that residence in 1830, and then taxes. So you'll see I don't really have a whole lot on William. But what can AI do if I just give it this? So number two is to ask AI to summarize the record from the research log. So when I do this, I click the little box, and this is an Airtable research log, an Airtable base. And by just clicking this, it selected these 6 rows. And I could also have just, selected them just manually. So you copy your rows or select them, and then you open a new chat in an AI model such as ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. And I actually tried the same prompt, exact same prompt with each of these. And I'll show you the results at the end of this. And my prompt was something like this. You are an expert genealogist. I'm writing a research report. Using the information from this row or rows in the research log, write a summary in narrative form. Use the source citation as the footnote. So I'm prompting it to actually give me a source, a footnote based on the information. So, what happened? Well, here's Claude's summary, and here is the bit of the research log I pasted, and here is my prompt. And Claude did a great job. It gave it a title because it was mostly about William Weatherford of Izard County, Arkansas. I didn't tell it that, it just made that up. And then it did take all of my information, and you can see it gave it the little footnote number here. It talked about the first tax record, 1829. It talked about the 1830 census, and it used all of the information in my abstract. And it also used some of my notes because in 1830, there are some men, William, and then some children that I have kind of identified in Henderson straight from my notes. And I also put that there was no adult female, so it's a suggestion that his wife had died. So all of this is basically what I have put into my research log. It's just now nicely written out with the footnote. So the rest of the summary talks about how William continued to appear in Izard County in the tax records and the amount he paid, and this idea that I had put in my notes that because it was exactly the same in 2 years in a row, it could be a copy of the previous year's assessment. And then this note about how he's not paying a poll tax, so maybe he was over the age of taxation at this time, and I could do some more research. And then it put the appropriate citation for each one of the numbers that it had put in there. So after it gave me this, I thought it would be fun to see if it could do some additional analysis based on the objective. So then I gave it my objective and asked for additional analysis. And so then it went ahead and did do that for me. It told me about how William and Henderson's records lined up. So this was interesting. It didn't necessarily give me anything new, but here was something that I didn't have in my research log that it figured out, that Henderson had a birthplace of Tennessee, and so it shows maybe a migration from Tennessee to Arkansas territory between 1815 and 1829. And, it talks a little bit more about the adult female, that William was likely widowed, and just gives me some more fun information. So this was great. Now, if you have done your summary and you've had AI create that for you, of course, you're going to want to go and really look at accuracy. Did it give you the right source citation? Did it give you the right dates, names, places? Is it telling you things the way you would like them to be told in your report? Is it maybe not quite on point for what you would like to have written? And so you'll want to review it for that. And you can also adjust the format. Maybe you want it in bullet points or a table. You want the narrative. Maybe you want a mix, because in our reports, we like to have a lot of different formats. And so as you are working with it, maybe you want to have it do a variety so that you can choose what you want to put into your report. And then you can prompt AI to provide the answer in markdown. And we'll talk about markdown in just a minute. So here are a couple of other things that I asked AI to do. Once it had that summary, I asked it to create a table, and it gave me the date and locality, the name, the event, and the source citation. So pulled all those things out, nice, neat tables for me. And again, I checked to see if it was actually just taking things from my exact research log, and it did. And then I asked it to give it to me in a bulleted list, so the same type of thing, and it again footnoted everything and put the sources below. So I had all sorts of different options for what I might want to use in my research report. Now you have to get this information that AI has created for you and get it into your project notes, your project document, your report template, whatever you use to start writing your report. And so one of the key things is to understand how to paste your AI writing as Markdown. So Markdown is a language that converts heading symbols from AI into a format that can be retained when copied into your document. And I'll show you an example of the table when it wasn't done in Markdown. Now, how do you use Markdown in your documents? Well, in Google Docs, you have to enable it. It won't show up unless you have enabled it. So you just go to Tools, then Preferences, and you say Enable Markdown. Then when you want to paste something in as Markdown, you right-click and it says Paste as Markdown. If you like working in Microsoft Word, you purchase the Markdown plugin for Word for a one-time fee, and then it appears in your toolbar, and then you can use it from then on out. And so if you need some help in figuring out how to do that, my suggestion is just to open up ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and ask them how to use Markdown, and it will just review for you exactly how to do it. So here's my project document. And here at the very beginning, I have my research question, who was the father of Henderson, Weatherford? And then I have my objective. And then after this, I have a lot of other information, background information, locality information, my research plan and such. But at the end of that, after all of this preliminary work, I have a section for findings and analysis. So in my project document, I like to start putting in some of my beginning findings. And so here you can see when I went to my Google Doc and I right clicked on, I had copied it from Claude AI and I right clicked in my Google Doc and said paste from Markdown and it brought it in perfectly. And you can see it did the footnotes down below. The numbers are, I've already got a bunch of other footnotes in this document. So it just picked up right where other footnotes had left off, which was great because it didn't try to renumber. It just recognized there were footnotes already and just started adding to them. One thing that I would change because in our reports, we don't typically put two footnote numbers, two citation numbers. And so it did put 34 and 35 together for the tax records. And so I would just adjust that, fix that up a little bit. But it did bring in my citations really nicely. One thing that it doesn't do is bring in italics. So I'd have to go through and italicize the websites such as Family Search or any titles of books. Now, here is a table that I asked ChatGPT to do, and I pasted it without Markdown so you could get an idea of what it might look like if you don't use Markdown, especially for a table. It sort of comes in right, but you can see it's really not how you want it. You don't want to have to go do any additional work. So when I pasted it with Markdown, then my table came in perfectly. And I could adjust the width of each of these columns and, do whatever I wanted to do with the table just as if I'd created it myself. So, how did Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini compare when I tried all three tools? Well, they all actually did really well with the narrative summary and the table. When I asked for the bulleted list, which was the final thing, Gemini ran out of space and said, well, come back in a few hours. And so it couldn't do as much for the free plan. I will say that I do have the pro plan in Claude and the free plan in ChatGPT. So, this should be ChatGPT. ChatGPT neglected mentioning the one female ages 5 through 10. It just said there were no females over the age of 10. So it kind of forgot about this little female girl here. And so that was the one small error I found or thing that I would have adjusted. And Claude, when I asked it for additional ideas for research or for that analysis, it just gave me those additional ideas for research, both in documents and DNA. ChatGPT gave me ideas for testing the hypothesis with DNA, and they both kind of knew that from my objective. I was working with DNA. Gemini didn't offer any additional ideas. So it was interesting to see how they were different, but overall did a really good job. So, tips and takeaways from this: fill out your research log with the report in mind, use complete source citations, do a good job on your abstracts of getting all the information out of your documents, and then write out some analysis and your comments because that's what AI will use to summarize. And then go ahead and just give it one row at a time. Or if you've got several related rows, like I had with William, all those kind of early records that I wanted to get all correlated, I did that. But you can experiment with what you like and then try it with all the different models. See which ones you like the best. Maybe try different prompts. I gave you an example of a prompt that worked really well, but you can certainly try different things. So I hope this gave you some ideas about how, as you are doing your research, you can use AI to really quickly get some writing going. Good luck with all your writing and your AI and your research. Thank you.